Would you say you're a hard boss to work for?
None of that feedback comes from people who actually work directly for me.
Would you say you're a demanding boss?
Are there good football managers who are not demanding? Are there good politicians who are not demanding? Are there good leaders who are not demanding? I don't think so.
This feedback, maybe people have got a bit weak and soft over the last few years.
If you're not happy in a job, if you're not happy in a company, amazing, you're an individual, you've got free will, leave.
James, would you say you're a hard boss to work for?
Wow, straight in. No, hello, no, good afternoon. Wow, okay, so no, I don't think I'm a hard boss to work for at all. I think anyone who's leading a team to try and achieve something remarkable has got to have high standards, has got to hold people to account. And I think that's what I've done. I think I've led a team to build something remarkable in BrewDog. And before I was doing this, I was captain of a North Atlantic fishing boat. So I've seen people, it's very, very hard to work for a North Atlantic fishing boats. Recently read Elon Musk's biography, and I think compared to him, I'm a pussycat of a boss. So no, I don't think I'm a hard boss to work for at all. And I think I like to lead teams, have high standards, and hold people to account, which is part of being a good boss.
So would you say you're a demanding boss?
Yeah, 100% a demanding boss, but I don't know many good bosses who are not a little bit demanding. Like, are there good football managers who are not demanding? Are there good politicians who are not demanding? Are there good leaders who are not demanding? I don't think so.
Have you ever had feedback that you are too hard?
So it's so interesting because there's so much noise out there in the media about me as a boss. If you read the newspaper, you think I'm like Darth Vader as a boss or something, like the same leadership style. None of that feedback comes from people who actually work directly for me. And I think if you were to ask the people that work for me and in my team how I am as a boss, it would be so different to kind of the perception in the media. And that perception is from a small amount of people who have worked at our company in one point in time, but none of these people have actually worked with me. So it's just the kind of second, third, fourth hand perception of me as a boss. And at the end of the day as well, I think there's like certain kind of inalienable truths in life. And one of them is a certain amount of people are just not going to like their boss, and that is a default. And a certain amount of people is going to think they're not paid well enough, and that is just a default. So you've got all these things that are just kind of noise in the mix. But as a leader, I think I'm passionate, I think I'm engaged, I think I've got high standards, and I think I'm the right amount of demanding to help people to achieve something remarkable and build fantastic careers.
Do you think maybe this feedback that you're a hard boss or demanding has come that maybe people have got a bit weak and soft over the last few years?
100% there's an element of that to it. And like my background is North Atlantic fishing boat. So,
you don't meet any woke people there.
You don't complain about your boss in a fishing boat. And if you're working 20 hours in a cold freezing deck as opposed to 18, then it's a good day. So yeah. Like that's my background. And I think from my perspective, if you're not happy in a job, if you're not happy in a company, amazing, you're an individual, you've got free will, leave. Like nobody is like holding people in a company against their own will, against their own wishes. And I think that's the kind of beauty of a kind of free market economy. If there's a company you like, you can buy stuff from. If you don't like it, you don't. If you want to work for a certain business and you like it, amazing. If you don't, leave and go and find another job. But I think there's certainly an element of the work ethic that people have in the UK I don't think is what it used to be. And I think the kind of levels of entitlement amongst team members are significantly higher as well. And I think that is because the kind of current generation coming up into work, and they haven't lived through a tough recession. They haven't lived through a period where unemployment's 10 or 15%. They haven't lived through a period where it's very difficult to get and hold down and keep a job. So if you take your job for granted, your kind of expectations towards that job is completely different to if it's tough to get a job and you want to kind of build a career and progress through a business.
What do you think of these like proposals of 4-day work weeks and work from home and all of that? Are you a fan of any of that stuff?
I am not a fan of work from home at all. I think teams in the office working together is a massive, massive competitive advantage. And like the best companies innovate, they move at speed, they're tenacious, they fight in the detail, they kind of brainstorm on the fly, they've got great connectivity between the teams. You can't do that if Elijah or Samantha or Kenzie's working from home on a Tuesday afternoon, so you just don't have that connection. So I'm a massive fan, and I think it's going to become a huge competitive advantage for companies who have their team back together in the office full time, but I don't think it's possible to innovate, to challenge, to build a remarkable business if you don't have your people together.
So,
and just on that, there's an attitude in the UK of like people not being happy. And my position would that be, there's certain companies that value people working together. There's certain companies that focus on remote work. Go and find one of those companies if you're not happy being in a company that values having its people together.
I told you I had Gary Brecker on the show recently, and he said the most guaranteed way to halve anyone's life expectancy, take any human, and the guaranteed way to halve their life expectancy is isolate them and have them on their own the whole time. And that really hit me. And the thing with this work from home, okay, some roles maybe you're a coder or whatever, or they can work remotely, but surely you're going to miss all the connection and the energy and the thriving around other people.
100%, I agree. And I think if you're just yourself, you don't have that connection with the team, the company, the mission, the product, and any disruptive business, it is difficult. So you go from celebrating a huge success one day to kind of fighting for your life the next day, and it kind of goes in that spectrum. And if you're not together and connected and engaged to celebrate those successes, then the tough periods just feel so much tougher because everyone is kind of isolated islands as opposed to a team working through something together when it's difficult.
And how are you going to get career progression and pay rises and things if you're not even seen?
100%. I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. You need connection with the team, your boss, the people in the business. And for career progression, you need to show people what you can do, what you're capable of, which is very difficult to do if you're dialing into a Zoom meeting.
Do you think as well, there's an element, you said earlier that a lot of the current generation, they haven't gone through a recession. And I think about this a lot. I have 120 staff and I want to attract great people. And sometimes I look at a generation or people and I think you're just entitled. And then other times I think, well, it's kind of not your fault. So for example, if someone is a trust fund recipient and they're just so used to having everything given to them, is it their fault that they're juvenile and dependent because they got given everything, or is it the parents' fault for giving them the money and not the challenge? So do people need a bit more struggle, and is it the fault of the entitled generation, or are they just a product of their environment?
That is a great, deep, meaningful, and insightful question, and one I haven't thought about before. And I would say with all of these things, it's probably a kind of blend of those two things. But yeah, very interesting question.
So do you find, for example, then, that some of your greatest pleasure or fulfillment is on the back of straight after some of your hardest challenges?
100%, but I always think it's the things you find out in your hardest challenge that helps you become an amazing business. So I've got this test that I use in my head when I'm hiring someone. And the test is, would I want to be stood next to this person at 2:00 in a February cold, dark, windy night in a force 9 gale in a North Atlantic fishing boat when everything was going wrong? And if the answer is yes, then I want to work with that person. And I almost
think of that in an interview situation?
Yes, 100%, every single time.
Even if they're just in like accounts?
Yeah, hell yeah. And for me, if everything's going well, you don't know who your team are, you don't know the quality of your team. When everything's going well, everyone bobs along, looks like a superstar, it's happy days. It's only when things are difficult that you can see someone's character, you can see their tenacity, you can see their resilience, you can see what they're made of, you can see their work ethic, you can see their desire to fight. So I was almost kind of thankful for kind of challenges when we went through them, because I really saw what my individual team members were made of and started to form a picture in my mind of who the kind of long-term keepers were that I could really build an amazing team around about.
So you're saying then that your greatest challenges are your greatest blessings?
So they don't always feel like that at the time, but I think there's so much you can learn in adversity about yourself, about the people around about you, about your team, about your product, about your offering, about your customers. And I spend so much time investing in companies and mentoring founders and entrepreneurs, and everyone thinks the story is like this. You launch something, it either goes exponential or it doesn't go, and that is a story. But what the actual story is, you launch something, it's tough. You have challenge, you have adversity. You find something in that adversity, you use that to tweak, to change, to adapt your business model, you apply that, and then you've got the chance to go exponential. Right. And most people just don't realize that like the things that you learn when things are at their most difficult, if you keep them and if you retain them, are the things that make you as a leader or your business fantastic.
So it's interesting that 17, I think, years ago, you decided to disrupt an industry that probably is quite difficult to break into. Like if I think industries now are difficult to break into, you probably wouldn't want to go into insurance or be a car manufacturer because it's just so hard. They're just dominated by huge businesses. And this business that you went into feels the same. Why did you go and pick a fight with some really big boys?
So that completely articulated the challenge. And when we started to do beer in 2007, the beer scene was completely dominated by a very small number of global behemoths, and the kind of route to market was entrenched. A lot of the pubs were owned by these companies as well, just kind of further entrenching their market position. And
I mean, like Whitbread and brands like that.
Yeah, but you got like all the kind of big beer companies as well, like Heineken owns a few thousand pubs in the UK, so they actually kind of own it all the way
they're
through.
just own the beer there and the pubs, which is the route to market.
Yes, and they own distribution companies. In Germany, all the distribution companies are owned by big beer, and it's the same in a lot of other places as well. So they've almost kind of built up this kind of entrenched monopoly.
Yeah.
And then what happens when there's any kind of entrenched monopoly? The focus on profits becomes so great that they just take quality and quality and quality out of their product to save cost, to put more money in the profit, because they're so immune to competition, because they've got this kind of entrenched castle with moats and guys outside with bows and arrows and spears and all of that thing. So they don't need to focus on the quality of the product. And we was like, wait a second, beer's this amazing magical thing that humans have enjoyed for thousands of years. And just in the last 100 years, these global corporations have stripped the magic, the joy, the love, the care, the attention out of it. Let's try and flip that on its head. We absolutely love beer. Let's be completely selfish and let's make beers that we want to drink ourselves. But that wasn't enough. We've got to do that, and then we've got to find a way to turn this entire industry on its head, to be bold, to be daring, to wear our heart in our sleeve, to put everything on the line for what we believe in time and time and time and time and time again. And that's what we did. And a lot of the kind of crazy high octane stuff looked like it was noise for noise sake, but it got our message out there, it got our company name out there, it got our personality out there. And it just started to get people thinking about, hey, beer doesn't need to be this bland, insipid, apathetic thing that's all made in the same place, which tends to be from somewhere else and just all tastes the same. And we managed to kind of take them on a journey with us, and at the same time build a company that actually stood for something. You could see the people behind it, you could see the mission, you could see the passion. It wasn't just this kind of bland, corporate kind of non-entity of a business. So we combined amazing liquid, huge amount of personality with a lot of drive and a lot of focus, and we just wanted to turn the whole thing on its head.
And did you know how entrenched and monopolistically controlled it was when you went into it?
Not quite, and it's maybe a good thing, because we might have thought, well, no, let's stay in the fishing boat and not do it. So it's been pretty amazing, the kind of things that you find, or kind of how deep that entrenchment is on the journey. But at the same time, we set up with 2 humans and 1 dog in Fraserburgh, northeast Scotland in 2007, and we're now ranked as the world's 17th most valuable beer business, which is kind of cool. And we want to break into that top 10. If you look at that top 10, every single company in that top 10 is 100 plus years old. And there's no other industry on the planet where the top 10 global players are 100 plus years old. And that just shows how deep that kind of entrenchment of market position is.
So what do you think you need to do to get into the top 10?
I think we just need to keep doing...
100.
Oh no, we're 17.
Oh, so top 10, yeah.
I think we just need to keep doing what we're doing. So I think if you look at our kind of strategy in beer over the last few years, our kind of heartland is progressive, hoppy, delicious IPAs, punk IPA, Hazy Jane, Elvis Juice. We've taken our kind of brewing expertise, our passion for fantastic beer, and started kind of moving that into the freemium mainstream section of the market. So we've got a fantastic lager that's on fire for us called Lost Lager. We've made an amazing stout called Black Heart that's taken a huge market share chunk out of Guinness. We've got cold beer, which is an accessible, kind of crushable, light beer with craft spin. So it's kind of expanding into the kind of heartland of big beer, which is lagers. We're a very strong position as the kind of world's leading IPA beer business.
And why beer?
I just insanely passionate about beer. I love beer. I love making beer. I love the history of beer. I love the different ingredients. I love how it all comes together, and I love what it enables you to do. And most people think beer is a light, fizzy industrial lager. What I love about beer, you can have the decadent, dark, chocolatey, boozy opulence of an imperial stout that you age in whiskey casks. You can have the kind of light, crisp snap of a fresh, hoppy pilsner. You can have the kind of big, bitter punch of a fruity, hoppy West Coast IPA, a kind of more juicy, succulent East Coast IPA, kind of sharp acidity of a nice, kind of fruity, sour beer. So that kind of whole spectrum of experience, and each one learning about the style, the history, the best way to make it, perfecting that, and just giving something people amazing to enjoy that they're passionate about. But it's also this kind of social experience you're giving as well, because like good beer takes people together at a time that people are kind of increasingly not together. So that's a key part of it as well. But I just love fantastic beers, making them and sharing them with as many people as I can. When
we were setting up, you asked me about entrepreneurship. Can that be taught? So let me throw that back at you. You mentor entrepreneurs. You are an entrepreneur. Should someone start a business in something they're passionate about like you did, or is that the way to ruin a hobby?
So can entrepreneurship be taught? If you can find a way to instill some childhood trauma that somebody's then trying to compensate for, then possibly, but otherwise it's maybe more challenging. But yeah, I think entrepreneurship is a difficult thing to teach. You can teach the fundamentals of good, solid business. Can you teach that drive, that tenacity, that determination, that I am going to die in a ditch before this thing fails? Hard to teach. Hard to teach.
And what do you think about, the Americans say, I read an Alex Hormozy post. It was like, failed first business, failed second business, failed third business, and he went and he said his first 9 businesses failed. And that made me think, well, maybe you're just a bit. And should we be glorifying, multiple failures? What do you think about the role of failure in being successful? Is it a bit too glorified in America? Because I've never gone bust. I've been an entrepreneur 18 years. I've never gone bust.
100% agree. Hate failure. And for me, when you fail, the only thing you learn is you're not good enough. That is the only learning. So you need to find a way to make yourself better, to up your game, to up your work ethic, to up what you're doing.
That's a brutal lesson, isn't it?
But it's a brutal game. Like 90% plus of businesses fail.
Yes.
If they fail, you haven't done a good enough job. That's the reason for failure.
They're almost glorifying failure, aren't they? Like you have to have failed to succeed. I agree. I would hate to fail. I don't know if I'd probably go and hide.
Yeah.
But so the fear of failing is good to have because
it's an insane motivator. Yes. Yeah. That chip in your shoulder, that fear of failing, that little voice in your head. So you're not good enough that you need to compensate for.
But then just flippantly failing 9 times, is that really a good entrepreneur?
And if you're failing 9 times, whose money are you failing with? What's the consequence for investors?
Lenders, yeah. And they don't say all this stuff on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, if you failed 9 times, how many people now have less pension, less money to spend on their grandkids, less money to invest in the things they love because they backed your business that you're now saying you're happy failed? The investors are not happy it failed.
No, I feel like it's become a bit sort of like a marketing gimmick, really. Okay, so would you do it all over again?
Every single day of the week, yes.
Even though it was really hard?
It's supposed to be hard. Okay. It's supposed to be hard. So like what I say to the team is like, when it's hard, like wear those battle scars as a badge of honor. And like, there's been so many difficult points in this journey, but then if it's not hard, anyone could do it and success wouldn't mean anything. So it's like, you almost need to be, as any entrepreneur, I would say, at any point in your journey, be really thankful when things are difficult. Because if you don't have to do those difficult things, it's always the hard thing that drives the value. If you don't have to do those difficult things, your success means nothing. And there's 25 people waiting in your footsteps that can follow you and do exactly the same. So be grateful when it's hard, because that, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a CEO, that is the time for you to step up to plate and really add value.
Lockdown was probably the hardest experience I've had in 18 years in business. And it wiped out 3/4 of my competition. So in the moment I was like, this is hard. And then afterwards I was like, oh,
yeah.
If you'd have given me a shotgun to shoot 3/4 of my competition before lockdown, I might have taken that. I didn't have to do it because lockdown did it. So what you're saying is the harder it is, if you keep pushing through, you're probably more likely to be successful because it's hard.
100%, and that kind of lockdown was something that affected all companies equally. Any small company that starts up, they're going to go through kind of waves of adversity, challenge. It's almost kind of firefighting on a daily basis.
You just don't expect it to be lockdown, that was all.
You just don't expect it to be lockdown, but I think that example applies to lockdown. But just any company on the journey, there's going to be times it's insanely, insanely difficult. Be grateful for those times, because it's what you do in those times that will determine your success.
Yes. Now, so I think most people who love entrepreneurship and breathe it and live it and are it, they understand that. But in the moment when the pain is strong, how do you keep telling yourself that? Because when you're in a lot of pain, you just want to get rid of the pain, don't you?
Yes, you do. You do.
So we're saying just the pain is building the character, what's hard is what's good. But it's easy for us sitting in your nice podcast studio in your amazing offices saying this.
Yeah.
How do people actually stay through the pain when it really feels hard?
You have to be so passionate about what you're doing, because I think that passion is the only thing that can sustain you. So many people start businesses for the wrong reasons.
What are the wrong reasons?
They want to make money, they think it'd be fun, they think it's a bit rock and roll, they think it's cool, they think it's going to be easy, they want the kind of flashy social media profile without doing the kind of hard work, so many people posting about building their dream business and the thing's bust in 6 months' time. So you've got to be insanely passionate about what you do, and that passion is what's going to sustain you, what's going to drive you when things get really difficult. And I think it's people who do things that are not insanely passionate about what they do and then not aware of just how difficult it's going to be. Those are the ones that kind of fall by the wayside in the journey.
So is there something you didn't tell us about why you stepped down as CEO?
It's actually something I probably wanted to do a while ago. So I love business. I adore business. Like, my hobbies are investing. If I'm listening to podcasts, it's business podcasts. The only type of books I read is business books. I just adore business. And like, all of my heroes are people who've built multiple amazing businesses. And I never imagined doing something for as long as 17 years in one place. So I always kind of thought over my career, I want to have built multiple fantastic businesses. But just with BrewDog, my love of the business, the mission, the people, what we were doing was just so strong that I wanted to stay there for a really long time. I came quite close to doing what I've recently done. I think it was maybe kind of four years or so ago with a CEO that I had in place at the time, and they got a job offer and kind of left, and that kind of put that kind of plan up in smoke. And the kind of wider BrewDog network now employs almost 4,000 people.
Wow.
And running a business with 4,000 people is very different to kind of growing and kind of business. And I would kind of back myself over most people or over anyone to take a business from 0 to 100 million turnover. It's a very different skill set running a 400 million, 4,000 person business. And although moving fast and being tenacious in our culture, there's only so fast you can move with 4,000 people, and there's only so much, like, a certain speed you can grow. So I love the business. And
so are you saying you enjoyed less as it got bigger?
From a leadership perspective, yes.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Because of the lack of speed?
No, I loved it when I knew everyone's name. Like, when we had a couple of hundred people and I knew everyone's name and could work with everyone, I loved that. Now, I loved being able to build a big business and what I've learned, and being able to create loads of fantastic jobs and get our beer into way more people's hands. But where I think I'm best as a leader is probably in a quick moving, fast growing business that's smaller than BrewDog. And I think where my skill set is kind of strategy, drive, passion, determination, vision, marketing, the space between us and the customer. And running a 4,000 person business, you spend a lot of times 6 hours meetings back to back on the next year's budget planning and stuff, which a lot of people can do better than me. It's not really kind of what I feel passionate about. So with the evolution in my position after 17 years, I'm still very much involved in the beers, the market and strategy, the parts of the business I love. And it just kind of frees up time and bandwidth for me to focus on other projects. We've got a great COO who's now the COO, and another James Arrow who's exceptional at kind of running large companies who I work closely with. So love the business, love the journey, very excited about the next chapter for me. And I want to build multiple fantastic businesses over my career, and I'm excited for the opportunity to do that. But also scary, because get to try and do something bold, get to try and do something ambitious, where failure is a very, very real possibility again. So that kind of comfort net is completely gone. But I don't just want to have built one really good business. I want to have built multiple. So
I saw a little bit of social media noise this week about you goading up the Dragons again. So did you pitch to the Dragons 17 years ago?
We didn't quite get that far. We went down to Manchester, we had suits on, we pitched our little hearts out to the producers before we were due to see the Dragons, and the producers felt that we weren't good enough for TV and we weren't investment worthy. So Dragons Den, we were there in the studio, we got that far, but we didn't get to pitch to the Dragons.
Right.
So we were turned down before that, and if the Dragons have invested in the deal that we'd offered, it would have been by a factor of over 100, the most lucrative investment in their history.
Really? So you didn't even get to pitch in front of them yet?
We didn't.
You would
even
have been the biggest investment?
By the most successful by a long, long way.
So taking an average amount of share a Dragon normally takes in a business, roughly how much has been left on the table?
A couple of 100 million.
Wow.
Yeah, a couple of 100 million.
So you added them all, didn't you? You tagged them all in.
Yes.
Yeah. For years, people have been asking me where I buy my watches. Many of you may know I'm a watch collector, I'm a watch investor, and those as an asset class have done me very well in the last 15 years. I have never shared where I source my watches from or my watch dealer.
until now. My watch dealer used to be a professional footballer for Manchester United, and he formed a watch brand called Broadwalk, and he sources the higher end brands like Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe and Richard Mille. I trust him, I've used him for many years, and recently we've done a partnership, hence I'm inviting you, if you want to start investing in watches and protect your money from the banks and inflation, to check out Broadwalk. That's BROADWALK. And the website is broadwalkgroup.com. The email is sales@broadwalkgroup.com. And please don't share this, but his number is 07496 878 153. Obviously, only message him if you're serious about buying and investing in the higher end watches. People have been asking me for years, and for the first time ever, you can get access to my watch dealer.
Were you being a bit cheeky and rebellious, or do you want them to invest in your next venture?
More on the cheeky and rebellious end of the spectrum. I thought it was a good way to make a point, a good way to kind of tell an interesting story. And so much of building a business or brand is storytelling. And you need to kind of create those kind of noteworthy moments and amplify those noteworthy moments and kind of create interesting hooks. And I thought it was just a really interesting hook. It's a good story. Let's see what happens. We're in discussions with one of them at the moment, but it was very much about awareness as opposed to investment.
And what's the new disruptive business?
The new business is Social Tip. So 17 years, founder, CEO of BrewDog, 4 days off, and then just straight back in again. I thought 4 days sitting on a beach was enough. So yeah, I went to Italy for 4 days and now straight back at it. So Social Tip exists to help companies turn their everyday customers into their influencers. So Social Tip comes from everything I've learned from being at the coalface of marketing for the last 2 decades and everything I'm seeing in marketing, especially over the last 5 years, where it's so difficult to connect authentically in fragmented online platforms, where trust in adverts is at an all-time low, where macro influencers just feel so inauthentic, and where Gen Z's allergic to anything that looks or feels like advertising or marketing. So Social Tip is essentially good old-fashioned word-of-mouth marketing amplified for the digital age and scalable through our technology. And the whole premise to a brand partner is don't spend £5,000 on one influencer with 1 million followers to do one post where the engagement rate's going to be low and the trust factors going to be low. Give 500 of your customers £10 to create 500 posts. You're going to get more engagement, better content, and you're shortening the distance between yourself and your most important, authentic advocates, your real customers. So we help brands turn their customers into their influencers.
Wow. I like the idea of that, because the customers are your brand ambassadors anyway if they're happy, and you're just making it easy for the customer to promote you and you to invest your budget in a decentralized way to your customers.
It's the democratization of influence online. And when I had the idea, I've had the idea for a while, I was actually very lukewarm towards the idea and almost callously indifferent towards it, because I thought, this idea is so good, somebody must have done it. Somebody must have done this. And I started doing some research, and the kind of more research I did, the more excited I got, because nobody's actually done this before. So then I became very excited about the idea. But what I tell myself and what I tell everyone in our team, in our business, 5% idea, 95% execution. You can have the best idea in the world. That accounts for 5% of your likelihood of success at the most. The other 95% is execution. So excited to be back in the hot seat with a really good small team to see if we can execute against this idea.
So you clearly are passionate about marketing. So give us some crazy stories of rebellious BrewDog marketing.
We have done so much. And when we set up, we were, myself and Martin, we were in our mid-20s. We were a tiny business trying to take on global giants, and we had no budget at all. So no budget, you get lost. So we had to do things that were so,
got money,
you have to be so on the edge, but like necessity is the kind of mother of all creativity, and a constraint shouldn't be seen as a punitive thing. It should be seen as a beautiful catalytic force to force you to think about things in a different way. So that was kind of very much the intention. We have projected ourselves naked onto the Houses of Parliament. We have drove a tank.
Just let that sit in a minute. Let everyone just sit in there.
Yeah, through the streets of London.
You drove a tank through London?
Yeah, we have hung out of a helicopter over Wall Street and the Bank of England and thrown little stuffed cats with parachutes out over the Bank of England and Wall Street in a campaign that we called Death to the Fat Cats. We have parodied Vladimir Putin. We have made a beer at the bottom of the ocean. And it's so many times, well, we've kind of taken a real stand for the things that we believe in and kind of stood up for the causes that we're kind of most passionate about. But like time and time again, we were willing to take huge gambles and put everything on the line and risk everything falling to pieces. And with BrewDog, throughout the journey, always said to our kind of small and growing team, this business is going to be one of two things. We're going to be a global success, or we're going to crash and burn completely. But that is fine, because the space in between is completely boring and we've got no interest in that space at all. And I almost think if you're a small business, and it's a bit of a cliche, but like the biggest risk is not to take a risk. If you don't take a risk, if you don't take a gamble, and they need to be strategic, intelligent gambles, but you sometimes need to take a gamble. And looking back at the journey, we took gamble, time and time again. Did they all work? No, but just the fact that we're willing to take them, and a lot of them work, can really help propel the business.
And what would you say is the biggest gamble you took that failed?
Biggest gamble that we took that failed. Didn't feel, but like the biggest gamble we took, and it felt like the scariest gamble at the time. So this was back in 2009, and we were completely out of money. We were growing, we were profitable, but then cash flow black hole just means that you've got, it's like, and it's so hard for people to get their head around, I've got this business, we're growing, we're profitable. Why have I got much less money, and why do I need to kind of finance this cash flow? So 2009, global financial crisis, we couldn't get any more money from any of the banks. Didn't want any of the terms that conventional investors were offering us. So we came up with this thing, and this was crowdfunding before crowdfunding even existed and people knew what it was. We decided to offer our customers the chance to buy an equity stake in our company on our website. We called it Equity for Punks. I went to 6 different legal companies. Every single one of them told me, James, what you're trying to do is illegal and impossible. You can't do it. Now, what person stops after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? I kept on going. 7th legal company was like, well, maybe we'd have to do it in this way. It's risky, but okay, we could try it. Cost us £120,000 to set up at a time with only £50,000 in our bank account. So we gambled the entire future of our business in making this completely untried, untested, new business model work that everyone told us was illegal and we couldn't do. And it turned out to be kind of one of the most transformational moments in our journey. We called it Equity for Punks. And since then, in 2009, we've done Equity Punks another 5 times. We've got a community of 227,000 Equity Punks all over the planet. Wow. They're not just investors, they're advocates, they're ambassadors, and the kind of heart and soul of our business. But that was do or die, because it was 120,000, we'd only £50,000 in the bank. So if that hadn't worked, it would have been game over, and I would have been back in the fishing boat.
Wow. And what would you say is your best marketing campaign ever?
Oh my goodness, best marketing campaign ever. There was one that I just loved, that was a TV advert that we did. We put it on in the middle of Love Island. It was just a huge white screen. The words advert were massive, and it was 20 seconds of a can of punk IPA and just death metal. And that was it.
And that did well.
It did so well. The fact it was on Love Island was like such a juxtaposition. So I think that was a standout for us. I think a lot of the sustainability campaigns that we've done recently have been really important. We became the world's first carbon negative beer business, massive focus on sustainability in everything we do. Back in the day, making the world's strongest beers was so impactful for us. And we want to kind of challenge people's perceptions of what beer is, how it can be enjoyed, and kind of show people it's not just this kind of light industrial lager. So we started off by making an 18% beer that we called Tokyo, which got banned by the Scottish government. There was an amazing headline in The Sun, which was my head, the bottle of Tokyo, and the headline was binge drinking, blame this man, which was not cut out and put in my grandmother's scrapbook selection.
Was that weirdly good for business for you?
It was good for business, yeah. It was good. I mean, it was an expensive beer that we sold 500 bottles on our website. It was for connoisseurs, aficionados. It wasn't causing binge drinking at all. We then decided to make an even stronger beer. So we made a beer called Tactical Nuclear Penguin, 32%, the strongest beer that had ever been made. And we actually made that through a process of ice distillation. So we took some of our tanks to a local ice cream factory and froze the beer again and again and again in their freezers. As you freeze it, the alcohol has a lower freezing point than the water. You can take away the water, you're concentrating alcohol. A German company then stole our crown and made a stronger beer at 38%. So we decided to have a bit of fun with it and get the title back. So we made a 41% beer that we called Sink the Bismarck that got us a lot of publicity and attention. The German company made a stronger beer. We then made a 55% beer. Wow. The strongest beer that's ever been made. And to do something disruptive, a bit innovative, to get people thinking about things in a slightly different way, we actually packaged the beer in taxidermy, which was quite controversial at the time. So we did a limited edition run of 12 bottles, and they were packaged in squirrels and stoats.
Where did you come up with all these ideas?
Oh, I have got a lot of messed up stuff in my head. So it's almost not like where do I come up with ideas from? It's how do I filter through them and make sure I only use the best ones. But yeah, never struggling for ideas.
And would you say, therefore, then that business is maybe an outlet for you? Is it almost therapeutic?
I don't know if it's therapeutic as such, but I definitely think it's an outlet. And I don't think it's a surprise that so many successful entrepreneurs are slightly neurodivergent, in that ability to think differently, to see things differently, to think outside the box and come up with different ways to kind of navigate issues, problems, challenges, opportunities is so important for businesses, which is why I think like there's such a high over-indexation of neurodiversity in entrepreneurs.
Would you say you're a rebel?
Yes.
And what happened in your childhood to make you a rebel? Because we've all got a childhood story, haven't we?
Yeah, just like...
Were you a bit of an outcast at school?
A little bit, but just always issues with authority, hated being told what to do. So just like never liked any type of authority as well. I'd be the worst employee in the planet. I would just like constantly like undermine and stuff. So yeah, I think just always kind of hating authority, a little bit of an outsider, pretty socially awkward is as well. And I guess if you're socially awkward, a little bit neurodivergent, you care less about what people think. But if you care less about what people think, you're far more likely to take gambles and do things that other people wouldn't because they're busy caring what people think. So I think it actually turns out to be kind of quite a strong suit that you don't care too much about what people think. And I think it gives you license to take risks, to push the boundaries and to do some really interesting things.
Yeah, I suppose if you're not laden with doubt and worry about how people respond to some of the risky things you do, you don't have to wade through all that noise in your mind. You can just crack on and get it done.
Exactly. Just crack on. And like what people think, it is electromagnetic waves washing over the cortex of somebody that's going to be dead soon as well. So you shouldn't sweat it too much.
I meet a lot of people because, you know, like you, I help a lot of entrepreneurs, and they do have this continual worry for what people think, especially like if they're putting stuff out on social media, they're worrying about all the critics and the haters. So as someone who just doesn't really have that problem because it's not the way your brain works, what words could you give to people to help them just care a bit less?
Well, I think the best way to get people to hate you is to be successful doing something you love.
Oh, that's a great reframe.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like a lot of the time it's their
so
own...
if they're going to hate you anyway, so you might as well be successful and piss them off big time.
But I mean, a lot of the time it's their... Like you don't get Michael Jordan bitching in the comments on YouTube. So it's like... Like how many of those online trolls are living the life that you want and doing the things that you want to do and achieving the things that you want to achieve? Probably not that many of them. And a lot of the times with kind of online haters, it's just their kind of own frustrations and inadequacies they're kind of trying to project on people. And with social media, you can kind of levels the playing field in terms of like opinions, but that's a kind of interesting perspective at time. But yeah, the kind of framing for me is the easiest way to get people to hate you is to be successful doing something you love.
Wow. And have any of them ever got through? Has the media ever got through? Because they've said some stuff about you, which you don't agree with. Yeah.
I mean, to say that it doesn't affect you is just a lie. So it's, you go through things that are incredibly difficult and the kind of framing is like, well, it's very silly to take things personally from people that don't know you personally. So if there's criticism from someone that knows me, then I will take that all day long. If it's third or fourth hand that's kind of fabricated from people that don't know me, then you've just got to let that kind of wash over you. And I don't think there's like anyone that's kind of done something or kind of built something remarkable that doesn't have, like, no company has got a 100% delighted bunch of kind of former employees. Like no brand online hasn't got a pocket of people that are kind of not happy with what it does. And I also think it's a universal law as well that if you're the leading brand in any category, you've got people who are going to go out their way to disparage what you do. And it's so true in all walks of life. If you're the leading car, if you're the leading electronics, if you're leading something, you'll have pockets of people that just don't like that brand and disparage it because it is that kind of market leader. So yeah, it's one of these things. Some of the noise is painful. It's tough. Just need to take it on the chin, double down and work hard and push forward. And unfortunately, it's kind of part of the day and age that we live in. And I was in a podcast by the author of the kind of chimp paradox, and he said that today's day and age, even if you send an angel down from heaven, they're going to get criticized for certain things, and some things it just is what it is.
Yeah. No good deed goes unpunished, I think we're saying.
There you go.
Yeah. Is there any one thing the media has said about you that really hurt, that angered you, that's wrong?
Yeah, about 90% of it.
So what main thing gets under your skin?
I just think all of it, I just kind of let it go, but it always follows the same formula: 20% truth, 50% fabrication, and then another kind of 20% of kind of speculation on top of that. And I've just kind of learned to tune out and focus on what's important, business, team, family, and trying to build something. That's what I'm focused on.
Is there any role in your new company where you would employ you?
Only if I didn't want to be CEO.
Right.
But that could be quite an interesting setup. So I would employ me as CEO, but I just think...
But then could you work with you and manage you?
Possibly in a hands-off way, but I just think so many people that are entrepreneurs, they have to be able to make that decision. They have to then live and die by that decision. They have to be able to move at the speed that they want to move at. They have to be willing to kind of make calls and kind of take risks and do other things. And I just think that is where I'm most comfortable. That is where I think I can achieve the most. So yeah, I don't think I could work for someone else, and I think I would probably struggle to work for myself as well.
I have this theory.
Yeah.
I don't know how many interviews I've sat in. It's got to be 1,000 or more. I have a theory that everyone lies in an interview, even people who believe that they are very truthful and moral. What do you think about that theory?
Everyone lies. I mean, potentially is everyone kind of putting on a act a certain amount of time? Who's the kind of real person underneath that act? I think there's always a difference between somebody's public persona and somebody's private persona. I think that's probably quite a marked difference in my case. And I think today we're the kind of more vulnerable edge of the public persona, but we're definitely not the kind of private persona, James. So I wouldn't say that's lying, but I would just say there's kind of different elements of my kind of character as James that comes out in different settings.
And how do you sit between essentially being a marketer and promoting the very best version of your brand and telling the warts and all truth?
I don't know. I think that kind of warts and all truth is powerful, because I think that vulnerability, that openness, some of the most successful social posts that I've done is my 10 biggest mistakes as CEO, the kind of 10 kind of tough times. And I think self-congratulatory, polished success stories kind of just bounce off. So the mistakes and the failures, I wouldn't celebrate them, and they're insanely painful, but I think there's something to be done for kind of sharing those experiences and what you learned and what you did and how you course-corrected and how you kind of built forward from there.
Yeah. Something I personally struggle with a bit is how honest should I be about how hard things are currently? Because you just said people relate to your struggles and your challenges, but at the same time you are the champion of your business and you're trying to promote this brand. You might be going through something really personally difficult. You might be going through that really difficult position, hard for cash flow, even though profit is good. Do you ever think about that juxtaposition?
I think about that a lot, and I use that structure in a lot of my meetings. So there's one of my favorite bits of kind of business advice, and I've spent so much time working on this with my team, is the Stockdale paradox. Do you know the Stockdale paradox?
No, please tell me.
Okay, so James Stockdale was the highest ranking American naval officer to be captured by the Vietnamese in the Vietnamese War. He was brutally tortured and captive for 5.5 years in a prisoner of war camp during that war. And he was asked in an interview afterwards, what got him through. And he said it was a kind of blend of pragmatic optimism. And he says, you've never got to lose faith that you're going to prevail in the end, but you cannot confuse that faith in... It's not good. So he said that you can never lose faith that you're going to prevail in the end, but at the same time, you've got to face the brutal facts of your current reality. And it's that blend of pragmatic optimism that every entrepreneur needs hardwired into their DNAs. And it's so easy to get carried away with the good things, the amazing things, the challenging things. So how I so often start a meeting with my team is fuck the agenda. You've all got a bit of paper and a bit of pen in front of you. Write down the 3 most difficult things at this moment in time, and that is going to be our agenda before we speak about anything else. And we call it James's brutal facts meeting.
Right.
And these are the things that people don't want to speak to. And if you don't force them to speak to, they get kind of pushed down and you leave them. And then in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, they bite you in the ass so hard that it could be game over for the business, or it's this massive disaster. So I just love that Stockdale paradox, which is you've always got to believe that you're going to prevail in the end, but you've always got to face the harshest, most brutal facts about your current reality, and it's doing that with optimism. It's going to help you prevail in the end. But if you've just got faith that you're going to prevail in the end and don't lean into the really difficult things on a day-to-day basis, that faith is not worth anything.
Wow, yeah. Do you see that there are lots of paradoxes in business and life?
100%.
Do you think everything's a paradox?
I wouldn't go that far, but there's definitely a kind of lot of things that's kind of juxtapositions that you kind of need to hold true. And even just when you're building a team, when it comes to spending money, we have got to invest really passionately and really diligently, but hard in the things that's going to really help us. But at the same time, we've got to be so tight on costs in other areas. And that's been something that's been like so hard for us to communicate effectively. It's teams like, well, if you're spending money on that, why not on that? And I think there's a kind of great distinction in the company between working money and non-working money. And for me, working money is anything that's going to grow the business. Now, you need to invest that so smartly. But like businesses need to grow, and you need to do something to make those businesses grow. But then there's non-working money, which is shared services, which is back of house, which is kind of non-value add. And it's like such a juxtaposition to get teams and peoples and companies to understand that, okay, we're going to need to invest, but because we're investing here, doesn't mean that we can go crazy in these other areas. And that's been a kind of constant challenge, and it's always a constant challenge in our growth company.
Yeah, I sit in my board meetings and I've got non-execs who all they're looking at is the profit and loss.
Yeah.
And I'm leading the business and I'm looking at the people, the mission, the product and everything else. And that feels like another paradox where you want to create the best product ever, but you still have to look at the profit and loss, and you still have to be efficient, you still have to make net profit, and you still have to keep shareholders happy. Does that sometimes pull you?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. And like, we're lucky in terms of what we've done is like the first, second, third, fourth, fifth priority for us as a business as BrewDog is the beer quality. We live and die by what's in every single glass, and that is just so entrenched into our culture that is just something where, like, if we compromise on that, we might as well go home. If we even do a tiny thing,
even if profits are dropping,
if we compromise that,
even if you're not hitting targets,
even if we're not hitting targets, like,
even if you're over budget and spend,
even if we're over budget and spend. So like everything else we need to do, and we can take massively drastic action elsewhere. But as soon as we degrade it's a slippery slope to the bottom. As soon as we degrade the product quality a tiny bit.
But then the paradox of that is these massive beer companies make huge profits doing that.
Yes, and for us to achieve the scale that we've got to get the market to shift a little bit in our direction. But if we try and shift in their direction, they're so much bigger than us. No, we don't become them. We become a little version of them, and then it's game over because we don't have the scale to make the whole economics work. So we've got to live and die by what's in every single glass. So for us, that is non-negotiable. We make the best beers we possibly can. Like, that cannot change, and there's nothing that's ever going to impact that. Everything else is up for debate and up for grabs, but the beer quality, never.
Right, wow.
Now, I've been on a mission for 17 years to help as many people on this planet get better financial knowledge. If, like me, you'd like to make, manage and multiply more money, I recommend that you join my digital financial freedom platform. It's really easy to join. You just type in rob.team. There you're going to learn my 4 M's of making, managing, maintaining and multiplying more money. And the even better news is there's no risk to you because it costs less than 20 pence a day to join. You can cancel anytime. Join right now. I'll also give you my 12-week Money Mastermind University completely for free. It exposes the banking system and teaches you how to play them at their own game. If you join rob.team right now, you get that completely for free. Just type in rob.team. We'll see you inside with the 10,000 other members in rob.team.
What's the most controversial thing that's happened in BrewDog 17 years?
Most controversial thing would have been the open letter that we had a few years ago from a small amount of former team members saying that we had a toxic work culture.
Oh, wow. And can you explain that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, it was during COVID, and it kind of blew up into this media storm. It was a really tough time for us as a business, and essentially a small amount of people who hadn't worked for the company for a foreseeable amount of time said that our culture was rotten and we pushed people too hard, and I was too demanding as a as a leader and all of these things. And I think it kind of blew up into a media storm. So that was really difficult at the time. It caused us a lot of issues internally, externally. I think it was so far away from the reality of our business as well, but then perception and reality, and like there's so much untrue things published in the media, and if it's published in the media, kind of so many people just kind of take it as gospel. And I think it's fair to say that kind of at points in time during the kind of high growth periods of our company, were we the best company to work for the planet? Probably no, but
well, sometimes things are hard. Like, sometimes it's not fun to go and work when it's hard. And what you can do, pretend it is a fun place to work. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's almost like you can't be truthful about that anymore.
I would concur. Yeah. Sometimes working, having a job is tough, but at the same time, the position of our company was never anything like the kind of position that the media pushed. Like so far away from that. So that kind of perception reality thing there was difficult. And I think the fact that a lot of the kind of people's motives at the time were kind of pretty disingenuous for kind of trying to attack us or trying to kind of criticize us as well, which was a kind of tough thing to get through as well.
What's a secret you never shared, or a story you've never told?
Wow, you're hitting me with a big
I don't want to just be AN on the podcast, do I? And this is called Disruptors. You may have noticed, James.
Yes. Yeah. Story I've never told. Okay, that's tough. Let me think. This is going to be the most boring bit of the podcast. This is going to be like edited down.
I think people like the
suspense,
the looser bits. Yeah,
the suspense before something that's going to be very disappointing because I can't think of anything. It's
Is it that you can't think of anything, or there's something in your head and you feel you can't say it?
No, I would say I'm like so open, and like especially now that I'm kind of no longer kind of in the business kind of day to day, it gives me a license to be kind of even more open because I'm no longer kind of CEO and stuff. But I think we've just been so, especially when things are difficult. I think your defense and shield against things you can do two things. You can just shut down, or you can be such an open book that like everything is out there. So I think I kind of decided to go that kind of open book thing and stuff. So yeah, I'm struggling to think.
Okay. What about as a sea captain? You must have some crazy stories there. What's the craziest thing that's happened on a boat? You captaining some people in the North Atlantic?
Well, the kind of one that really kind of stays with me. So he passed away last year, sadly, but he was such a role model for me my entire life. My grandfather, the most hardworking person I have ever met, used to work kind of 4 or 5 jobs, and I grew up in a tiny fishing village in northeast Scotland, and I would spend my formative years skipping school, leaving my school backpack in my grandmother's house and going out to help him on his little lobster fishing boat. So I loved doing it, and I learned so much from him. And it was actually when I was helping him, I just set up a beer business. It was about 15 years ago. We'd been out fishing for lobsters together, and what quite often happens when you're fishing for lobsters, one of the ropes for the lobster pots gets caught up in the propeller of the boat. This was an icy cold, bitterly freezing February morning, and he was like, James, we're in the middle of the sea, you've got to jump out, take this knife in your teeth, swim under the boat in the dark, and cut the rope out of the propeller. And I was like, Granda, there's no way I'm doing that. He was 80 years old at the time. He started taking off all his oilskins. He took off his jumper and he looked at me and says, James, I'm 80 years old. If you don't do it, I'm going in. So I'm like, okay, give me the knife. So and then I got out of the water and I thought, okay, I'm freezing cold. He's going to take me back in so I can get a warm shower. He's like, put your gear on, we're still fishing. Okay.
Wow. And what would you say is the one best lesson you've had from your grandfather?
Best lesson from my grandfather? I think he was someone who, regardless of the situation and regardless how difficult it was, would just always do the right thing. And even if that right thing was at a personal cost to himself, just always try and do the right thing and just like always work really, really hard. The one lesson that I'm not going to take from him, just a little aside, he was in his 30s. He was staying in a caravan with my dad at the time, who was a baby, and with my grandmother, his wife, and there was a smell of gas in the caravan. So in the middle of the night, to investigate the smell of gas, he lit a match and he blew up the caravan and ended up in hospital for a month. So
just as a test to see if it was right.
Yeah, work hard, do the right thing, don't blow up caravans, as a life lesson from my grandfather.
You've touched on something there. Just want to ask you about, because since lockdown, I've been trying to figure out why everything seems so screwed. And, everything seems to be about maximum shareholder value. You look at the pharmaceutical industry, you look at the banking sector, it's just maximum shareholder value at all costs. You look at politicians, they just seem to be careerists. And I thought, I think the big problem in the world is people don't care enough anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're definitely a kind of interesting kind of cross section for our country, kind of where we go, and it's just that kind of level of care, almost the kind of mutual social contract is people need to care enough about certain things to come together to kind of function well as a society, and when that starts to degrade, and what other things degrade with it as well, and how much pride people have in their work, how much people care for their communities, their cities, their countryhood, their neighborhoods, like the things that they do. And I would say it's fair to say that there's maybe a trend of that level of care going down, and I think there could be worrying long-term consequences on that.
Are you over the UK?
I think at the moment the UK is an incredibly difficult place to do business. I think it's an incredibly difficult place to build a business. Tough times for the UK.
High taxes, low support from government.
Yeah, and for me it should be low tax, high tech, and about the government getting out of the way of people who are kind of trying to build businesses. And ultimately, I think
instead of sending them all abroad.
Yeah. Like builders drive the economy. So the best social policy ever invented is a well-paying job. Who creates the well-paying jobs in the UK? The vast majority is small and medium-sized businesses. So how does the UK government create an environment for them to flourish, for them to be stable, for them to be sustainable and grow and create more jobs? And everything the government's doing seems to be trying to do the opposite.
Why?
Of that. I just think they're kind of caught up in this odd circle of kind of not strong enough leadership, not being clear enough about what they stand for, kind of a lot of kind of apathy, and just kind of legacy of a succession of leaders who haven't been strong enough, who haven't been clear enough about what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, what's important for people in the UK, and just spinning around in a wheel of kind of worse and worse decisions, which is making it more difficult to be in business in the UK. But then the knock-on effect for everyone is standard of living is going down. If you look at the UK economy, we're doing the worst by a long way of all the developed economies, and it's a direct consequence of the quality of leadership we've had over the last half decade.
Wow. So I'd like to finish with a couple of quick-fire rounds.
Love it. Let's go.
First off, we have the Disruptors round on the theme of the show. So what's the biggest disruption that's ever happened in your career?
Biggest disruption that's ever happened in my career was when I decided to stop being a North Atlantic captain and set up a beer business.
Simple as that. And did you walk away from something quite safe and risk everything?
Yeah, like when we set up the beer business, I moved back in with my dad. Martin moved back in with his mum. We paid ourselves £214 a month for the first 3 years, and we worked almost 24/7 to try and get this tiny little business off the ground.
And here we are now. 4,000 staff, did you say?
Yeah.
400 million
turnover.
Yeah. Wow. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken in your life?
Maybe what I'm doing just now, which is odd, but
Because why?
Starting all over again with a tiny little business. And
do you ever think I don't need to do this? Why am I doing this?
Not for a second,
No.
But then it's a valid question, why am I not just sitting on the beach somewhere? Why did I just take 4 days off after 17 years? Why am I doing something that's so bold and so ambitious that the overwhelming likelihood is failure? Didn't consider those things for a nanosecond. I want to build something. I want to make a difference. I want to disrupt another industry. I want to build a fantastic company, and I want to create jobs. And it's what I get my kicks out of. It's what I love. It's what I love doing. If I'd sat a 5th day on the beach, I would have been even more bored. So not a question. I want to build things. I want to test myself. And ultimately, anyone leading a business is a test of you as a leader, your skills as a business person, as a thinker. So I want to test myself again. I want to take a risk. I want to put a lot on the line and see where I can take a new business.
What's your most brutal life lesson?
Most brutal life lesson, at least 50% of what you read in the media is complete nonsense. If you're successful in the UK, a large amount of people are going to be very envious of that success, which is going to cause them to do some quite nasty things. And then that just life is so short. I've lost a few people like so close to me in the last 12 months. And it just kind of puts so many things into perspective, into context. We're so lucky to be here on this planet, to be part of this life. The odds of us being here is like 400 billion to 1. There's more chance that you will win the lottery every single week for the rest of your life than just the odds of you being alive and on this planet. So it's such a precious gift. We're here for such a short time. And just make sure you kind of enjoy the journey, cherish it, look at it through the right perspective, but just like life is so short.
Mm. What's the most disruptive thing anyone's ever said or done to you?
So yeah, it's a hell of a long story, but I won a case in the highest court in Scotland last year, was awarded a landmark amount of damages of £700,000, and that was for an online campaign of fraud and malicious falsehood against me.
Oh wow.
So to kind of live through that at the same time as kind of growing the business, to kind of winning the court case was a really good vindication of some of the things that was kind of happening behind the scenes, but everything that kind of led to that and the kind of build up to that is probably the kind of most disruptive things that people have kind of ever done to me. So it can be the victim of this kind of focused, malicious campaign of abuse with a huge amount of kind of fraud and blackmail and stuff in the mix was definitely challenging.
Do you think these hard things that have happened to you are just the cost of your success? Because if you think about it, it's almost arrogant to think you can have all the success without the equal difficulties, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in like so many hard things happen to so many people. So this is life. This is the nature of the game. This is what we do. Like nobody's asking for an easy ride. Nobody's expecting it to be kind of plain sailing all the time. In just the day and age that we live in with social media, like people are going to get attacked. People are going to get criticized. And again, for me, it's if I'm getting criticized by people who know me personally, that's a whole different ballgame than people who kind of don't know me and kind of criticize me kind of third, fourth, or fifth hand. And it's the people that know me, the people that I work with, the people that's kind of close to me that I care about and care about their opinions.
Mm. So what's the best advice you ever remember receiving?
Best advice comes from one of my most respected business leaders, Sir Tom Hunter.
He's been on the show.
Oh, amazing Scottish guy. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this has stayed with me. He gave me this bit of advice over a decade ago. I was going through something difficult and I was like, Tom, should I do something about this now or should I give it a month and then see what I can do? And he just kind of looked at me in his kind of slow, stern Scottish way. And kind of looked me in the eye and was like, James, if you was running a marathon, would you wait until the 22nd mile to take the stone out your shoe? And it's just one of these little insights that just hits you like a thunderbolt. You know, thinking,
wow,
like, yeah. So it's actually something that we use so much in BrewDog. If we've got something to do, we're like stone, shoe, like we're fixing that now. We're not leaving that stone in our shoe. And it's so easy to put off the difficult things, the tough decisions, but it's so important that you kind of address them head on.
Mm. And what about the worst advice you ever remember receiving?
I think the worst advice, and this advice goes to so many small companies, like don't deal with supermarkets. It is terrible advice. You can't scale without dealing with supermarkets, and that advice should be reframed to deal with supermarkets, but find a way to do so that is innovative, that is value add, that adds value to their business, that doesn't erode your margin, that gets people excited about the category. So don't deal with supermarkets if you've got a lousy product and no point of difference. It's just going to get wasted on the shelf. But small businesses need to scale. The other bit of advice that I hate when I hear it given to small businesses is don't look international too soon. Like the UK is such a small market. If you're ambitious and you want to build something, you need to do well in the UK, but you need to do well overseas as well. And I just hate it when I hear people say, well, just focus in the UK market for now. I'm like, no, let's not. Let's try and be ambitious. Let's try and build a global business. So I think just kind of being ambitious in the early stage of businesses when so many people get to tell you to be slow and steady and cautious. And sometimes if you take a few gambles and put everything in the line, it kind of sharpens you up and kind of creates this kind of cliff edge when you've got no option but to find a way to make it work.
And what's your biggest regret?
My biggest regret would be that over the 17 years as kind of BrewDog founder and CEO, I loved it as well. So it's like a mixed regret, but I spent so little time with family. I spent so little time with friends. And like every waking moment, every holiday, I was on emails and calls. Like, so if I could do it again, I would probably
Would you change though?
I would try and work 99% as opposed to 100, and just give me that 1%, which means I don't have good friends who I haven't seen for 4 years or something like that. So I think just a slight redress of the balance, but then when you're in a business it's all consuming, it's tough and you're just sucked into it.
So final question, this show is called Disruptors. What does the word, you like the title?
I love the title. I love the title.
What does the word disruptive mean to you?
I love that word because without disruption, then it is just same. There's no innovation, there's no challenge, and ultimately there's nothing better. So for me, anyone looking to start a business, unless you're going to disrupt an industry, just stick with your, don't do it. Like the only success is if you're going to disrupt something, straight through product, straight through marketing, straight through business model, but you've got to look to turn things on its head. You've got to look to disrupt. And that is something I absolutely love doing. And I love looking at an industry, a project, a business, a way of working, and like, how can I do something that is completely better? How can I reimagine this? How can I do something that's so crazy or so insane? And what I often do as an exercise, if I'm blocked in my thinking, I'll say, okay, let's stop. What are the 5 craziest things that I could do just now? No boundaries, no parameters, no constraints. What are the 5 just wildest, wackiest things that I could do? And then often from that idea, as you kind of work them back and you find a path that gets you past that obstacle. So for me, any successful leader, any successful business, anyone trying to do something good, disruption needs to be like hardwired into their DNA.
Amen. And where can we follow you? And maybe you want to give us a shout out about the new business venture as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So very active on LinkedIn, James Watt on there, active on Instagram /BrewDog James. And the new business social tips. So we're launching very, very soon. We exist to give money to anyone who posts online. We want to democratize influence, and we want to help the best brands and best companies win through genuine advocacy.
James, thanks for letting me come to BrewDog in your studio.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Thank you.